The topic for today is rehabilitation strategies for the automotive sector. Now, I've been in the automotive sector for 15 years. And like Dr. Maxwell said, I started my career in advertising. I was at Mudra Communications, was with Ogilvy. Then I made a transition to consumer electronics and durables. And for the last 15 years, I've been with automotive. I was with Mahindra & Mahindra Limited, based in Bombay. Then I've been with brand Sköda for the last 12 years. Sköda, as you know, is part of the Volkswagen Group worldwide, the largest automotive company in the world. I've had a good chance of also working at the headquarters in Czech Republic in Prague. And my beat used to be markets from Asia Pacific, so the whole of Asia Pacific, Middle East, Northern Africa, Northern Europe, Australia, New Zealand. So that has also given me the chance to understand how different markets work differently in the same sector, that is automotive. And it's vastly different across the world. What I'll do is, first, let's examine the topic for today, rehabilitation. Now, it is derived from two Latin words, and I have this great love for finding the root words because that explains a lot. Re means again. We use that word repeatedly. And habiter means to make fit, to build something again, which by default means something has gone wrong. So rehabilitation means rebuilding something which has gone wrong or has broken. And which is what we are doing with the auto industry currently in India and in a lot of other parts of the world also. I'll keep my talk limited to the Indian market because that is where the focus is today and that is where I operate currently. Now, India is an automotive industry. To give you some basic bare facts about the automotive market in the country, you can roughly divide it into categories based on number of wheels of the vehicles. So, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and four-plus wheelers. That's a very crude definition. Or personal vehicles and commercial vehicles. Now, personal vehicles is all your two-wheelers, obviously, and passenger cars. They come into personal vehicles. But when you say commercial vehicles, then you have from three-wheelers, Tempos, and Vikrams going up to those massive Volvo and MAN trucks that you see. They are all commercial vehicles because they are deployed to earn money and not for personal use. Now, the interesting fact is that when it comes to the two-wheeler market in 2019, we sold 21 million units. That is 2.1 crore two-wheelers in this country. Just for the sake of comparison, you can imagine that previously I used to live in Czech Republic and the population of that country is 10 million. And we sold 21 million two-wheelers in our country alone, which is twice the size of the population of Czech Republic. And when it comes to four-wheelers, and I'm talking passenger cars only, last year we sold 2.8 million units, which is 28 lakh cars, which actually is a 12% degrowth over the previous year. We are the fifth largest automotive market in the world after China, US, Japan, and Germany in terms of volumes of cars being sold or units of cars being sold. But in terms of yield, we may be much lower simply because the average transaction price of cars in India is much different from, let's say, Germany. Just for the sake of comparison, the average transaction price of cars in India is close to 7 lakh rupees, whereas in Germany, it is close to 2 million rupees, that's 20 lakh rupees, which is why the value of that market is higher. But what separates us from the other markets is that we've seen steady growth over the last 2 decades almost. Every year on year, there has been growth in the automotive market, except for 2019, when we degrew by about 12%. So from 3.2 million vehicles in 2018, we came down to 2.8 million vehicles last year. And this year, the Jan-May figures are shocking compared to last year's Jan-May figures because we are seeing a degrowth of 47.3%, which basically means that the industry has shrunken to half its size. last year from Jan to May, we sold 12.6 lakh personal vehicles, personal cars in India. This year, the figure is 6.6. Now, there are various reasons for this slow growth, or let's say degrowth in the automotive market. Three main reasons are: one is that last year onwards, there has been a bit of a slowdown in the economic growth of the country, as you've seen, and there's always this debate of what is our rate of growth, and figures from 6.5% to 2% are being bandied about, depending on who you want to listen to. But the fact remains that last year there was a bit of a slowdown in our economy, and cars, as you know, are directly connected to the state of the economy in the country, the sale of cars. And why is that so? Because cars are the second most expensive investment you would make in your life. But I'll come to that point later. Now, why am I saying it's a bit of a disaster in the automotive industry? Because automotive contributes to 7% of India's total GDP. Our size of our economy, our total GDP is 3.2 trillion US dollars. 7% of that is contributed by automotive sector. And if you only look at the manufacturing GDP of the country, automotive contributes 40%. So it's a massive, huge sector. And it employs about 20 million people. That is 2 crore people are employed in the automotive sector. This is not only car making companies. This is car makers, all the dealers and workshops across the country. This is component manufacturers. India is one of the largest component manufacturers in the world also. So the whole ecosystem employs close to 2 crore people, which is why it is a bit of a disaster if you see 50% degrowth in this market. Now, what are the key factors that affect the automotive industry in our country? And these factors are very, very different in different parts of the world. So every country has its own set of unique facts and figures and phenomena which affects the automotive industry. For instance, penetration. Now, this is a word which is used to identify the potential of any market. The penetration in India of automotive is 19 per 1,000 people, 19 cars per 1,000 people, which is one of the lowest in the world. In developed markets like Germany, the figure is about 600, which means that 6 out of 10 people in Germany have a car. In India, it means 19 out of 1,000 people, which is 2 out of 100 people roughly. So, potential means that we have a lot of potential to sell cars in this country because the penetration is low. But costs are extremely prohibitive. The cost structure of automotive in our country is very different from, let's say, US. And when I say that buying a car is the second most investment you will make, it is true for most people because the most expensive investment you make is a house for yourself. The second most expensive would be your car. Yes, today I understand there are other things also once in a while, like education, for instance. So if you study abroad, obviously it's a massive investment. And if you have a very expensive wedding for yourself, it could be more expensive than a car. But that is not for everyone. Then the tax structure in our country is very unique. Somehow automotive falls in the sin product category, like alcohol and cigarettes and other such stuff, which is why the taxes are very, very heavy. This is a clear fallback of the erstwhile socialist system we had in our country, where cars were considered only for the super rich. Only a very few people could buy a car. And the car is considered a sin in this market. Now the world has changed. People need transportation for their earning and living. But somehow the tax structure on automotive has not been changed. In fact, year on year, it keeps going up, which is why the GST and the cess on top of it is almost 47-48% in automotive. So you can imagine that we have artificially made cars expensive in our country compared to, for instance, the US. Now the Audi A8 which our group sells in India for about 1.3 crores, sells for about 65 lakhs in the US. So you can imagine half the price in the US. Similarly, in the Middle East and all, cars are cheaper to buy, but not in our country, which is why cars are out of the reach of a lot of people. Another factor which affects our industry is financing. Now, in the four-wheeler category, the car category, almost 70% of the cars which are bought by people are financed through banks and financial institutions, because very few people make a down payment. In two-wheelers, it might still be true, but not so much in the four-wheeler category. And what happens in situations like today's is banks are not very keen to give loans as easily as they did about 2 years back. 2 years back, you could walk into a bank branch and ask for a bank loan to buy a car, and you would get it without much difficulty, with basic papers and all that. Now, today, as you would have seen in the last year or so, all the banks are suffering from non-performing assets and bad loans, which is why they become very strict when it comes to giving loans. Loans are not very easy to come by, which is why some people are finding it difficult to buy cars also, which is also a reason for the slowdown. Earlier, with your first job, 6 months into your first job, you could enter a bank, submit your 3 month salary slips and your papers, and you could get a loan. You try that trick today, it won't happen in a hurry because banks are careful. Another thing is that sentiment. The salaried class people are currently, in today's scenario, especially with COVID, are worried about their job security, about whether they're going to get their next promotion from, because a lot of people used to buy a car or upgrade a car when they got a better job or a solid increment or a promotion, because that is when you had that extra money to pay for your EMI and buy a car or upgrade to a bigger, better car. Now, in this scenario, in today's scenario, in the last 1.5 years, this is not happening to a lot of people. Last year, we know because of economic slowdown, the increments and salaries were affected. And this year, because of COVID, a lot of people have lost their jobs also, which is also why cars are not selling as much as they should. On the other hand, the trading class, the business people, the professionals, doctors, for instance, doctors who have not been able to do private practice for the last 3 months. And I was talking to a doctor in Allahabad itself who said that the doctors, obviously, the government is not allowing private practice because of COVID. Now their income has been affected. So doctors who wanted to upgrade to a bigger, better car have postponed their decision for possibly next year, which means that I have, as an industry, lost a customer which should have bought my car. And this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic, as we call it, is almost like a war-like situation. And it will take a long time to rehabilitate our industry, because coming out of a war situation is not easy. It takes a hell lot of effort on the part of the industry and the government and the people to pull it out of the troubled situation it is in. Now, let me give you a little idea about what are the steps being taken by the industry, and also by what is expected out of the government and people for rehabilitation of the auto industry. I will start with manufacturers because that is where I belong to. Manufacturers are also known as OEMs, original equipment manufacturers. There are about 17 four-wheeler OEs in this country and about 30 odd two-wheelers. What we are doing is, the steps that we've taken is, first thing is human beings, people come first. So protecting jobs and protecting earnings of people are the most important factor. Most of the automotive companies are trying to protect jobs and not sack people. Because tomorrow when the tide turns, we are not going back to the market to get these people. So at least the permanent employees and long-term employees, we are trying to protect jobs for all of them. It is the temporary workers who might suffer a bit. Second thing is, the companies are trying to pay the salaries on time. Because obviously, your expenses haven't come down as dramatically as you would imagine. You are still paying your rents, you're still paying fees for your children, you're still consuming food and electricity. And all of that costs a lot of money in this country, which is why the attempt is to pay salaries on time. What companies like ours are also doing is that we have a lot of our dealers dependent on us, and each dealer has about 200 to 400 people who are employed on a single showroom and workshop in our case, which means that a single dealership is running between 200 to 400 families. So what we have done as a company is that we have given our dealers special financial support to tide over these tough times, and this is given on top because obviously there's no performance. So it is not performance-linked bonus. It is just a benign kind of an on-top support which companies are providing to dealers. Then what we're also doing is to revive the business. We are launching the products which have been in the pipeline and not discontinuing any project, because this will also turn the sentiment positive. We are reducing the burden of purchase for the customers by coming up with easy EMI schemes, buy now, pay later schemes, putting in extra warranty on top, of giving extra insurance free on top, as much as we can do in our capacity to make your buying easy. Also opening up workshops and showrooms across the country, because that will help in generation of revenue, which will help the dealers and our business partners come back on track. Then making products affordable. What we are doing and what other brands are also doing is coming up with products which are not so fancy and over-contented that they are expensive, but more affordable car lines which people can buy in these tough times. And in our facilities, in our dealerships, in our workshops and showrooms everywhere, we are doing sanitization on a regular basis. We have started online payment so that customers don't have to visit showrooms and workshops. We have started contactless demo of cars, which means you can use a video chatting device to completely explain the car. People are using virtual reality, augmented reality, and all of that. And we are also arranging test drive and delivery at home, which is basically bringing convenience of a showroom at your house. So if you book a test drive, we will send a sanitized car at your place, and we can do all the paperwork that you want at your place so that you don't have to step into a showroom if you don't feel comfortable in the COVID times. Plus, we will pick up your car from home for servicing if you don't want to visit the showroom. So these are the various steps which manufacturers and dealers are taking across the country to rehabilitate the business. What is expected from the government and public, because to rehabilitate any business, any industry, especially ours, it is not only in the hand of manufacturers, the big companies. Not everything is in our control. A lot of extraneous factors are controlled either by the government or by public, or not by anybody in particular. For instance, what we expect the government to do now to revive the industry and help is have easier tax policies, lower the GST or the cess if possible to make cars more affordable to people, or come up with a scrappage policy, which was quite successful in European markets, where the government can come up with a scheme saying any vehicle which is, let's say, 7 years or 9 years or 10 years old, if you bring it for scrapping, then the government will pay you an incentive so that your next car that you buy becomes cheaper for you. For instance, if you have a 7-year-old car and you bring it back to the government will pay you some kind of a bonus for scrapping your old car. This is environment friendly on one hand, because old cars consume more fuel, give out more effluents, but newer cars are more fuel efficient as well as cleaner for the environment. The second thing is it also helps revive business because more new cars are sold. And how the government can help in this, I know, is not entirely in the government's hands, but the government can do a lot to stimulate the business of the country and improve the overall economic growth. Because, like I said, that the sales of cars in our country is somehow directly proportional to the overall economic growth. We have plotted a chart over the last 20 years to see the movement of the GDP growth rate and the sale of cars in this country. And there is no surprise that's actually running parallel. And what we also expect is a change in the sentiment and mood of the nation. Now, I don't want to make any political statement here, but what we observe after talking to people is that somehow since last year, the people of this country have been have had a little negative sentiment, let's say, with the governance in this country. They believe that they did not get what they expected from the government, which has also led to a slightly negative sentiment in the minds of people. And when the mood and the sentiment is negative, the first thing that gets affected is luxury products and cars. The more expensive things, which are not necessities, they get affected because you tend to postpone your decision of buying it next year. And what you're also hoping is that there will be a normalization of this situation globally, because it's not only India, but across the world, the automotive market is suffering. All the top 5 markets, including EU, are suffering because of COVID-19. And I think that the single most important thing that can change and bring about this rehabilitation is control and eradication of this virus, COVID-19, because I think that is, let's say, the last straw on the back of the industry, which is breaking our backs. So once we find a cure for COVID, and once the fear disappears, things will come back to normal. Businesses will start. People will start earning more money. People will start buying cars. And the automotive industry will be revived. So that, in summary, was my talk. Now we are open to questions, because you will learn more if you ask more. The consumer demand will come back again. If you remember, at the very beginning, I mentioned that India still has very low penetration of automotive. People like you, when you come into the workforce, I anticipate and expect that within the first 6 months or 1 year, people like you would like to buy a car for yourself. So there is a pent-up demand in the country. How we see it is that there is a temporary slowdown, and there's a temporary problem which will be solved as we go along. So I'm not painting a negative picture. It will bounce back.
Okay, sir.
And the strategy we are adopting is wait and watch.
Okay.
A lot of automotive manufacturers. Rupesh, I'm not a punter, so I don't give advices to people on investment. But usually it is believed that when you see that the industry is not doing too well and you understand that the potential is there in the industry, this industry is not going to disappear. That we all know. So if you believe that it is low, that this is the right time to invest, especially in a market like India with so much of untapped potential, this is the right time. For retail investors also, and for large investors also, if you see, my group itself has invested €1 billion in this market. We have not cut a single penny out of that. We are going ahead with that entire €1 billion investment for making cars in India. Apart from us as Volkswagen Group, there is Kia from the Hyundai family, which has invested close to €800 million with a plan to invest more. There is PSA Peugeot of France, which is investing €500 million. And there are Chinese manufacturers like Great Wall Motors, BYD Motors. So billions of euros of investment is coming into this country. So I think this is the right time to invest. So Aditya, without mincing words, I'll tell you this year would be very bleak, simply because of the losses that most of the companies have borne. And there is a cost to keeping the jobs of the people who are already working with you when you are not earning revenues. All the indications point that this year there'll be very low recruitment in the automotive sector. It will revive next year when the business comes back again. Okay, very good question. Unfortunately, the answer as of today is that e-vehicles are still very expensive in our country. Till the time the government comes up with a policy which facilitates and incentivizes people to buy electric cars, till that time nothing would happen, because electric cars are fabulously expensive. Right now, only the fancy people are buying electric cars because it's a statement. People like you and me who would like to buy an electric car to save the environment cannot do it right now, because a small size car, the internal combustion car, if it is roughly about 7 to 8 lakh rupees, the nearest equivalent to that in electric would be 16 to 20 lakh rupees. I don't think most of the people are willing to invest twice the money. So we will have to wait and watch government policies for electric vehicles to become mainstream. Okay, Akash, good question, because like I mentioned, there are close to 2 crore people employed in automotive. And when I say automotive, I mean end to end. I mean the entire supply chain, from nutboard manufacturers to transporters who transport our cars across the country. This year will be very bad for us. The initial reports that we've heard is that some of the smaller component manufacturers and all, who have had large orders cancelled by car makers, have no option but to either let people go, or some of them might turn bankrupt also. This will be a terrible year for them. So every company will have to devise its own methods. Obviously, we don't want this to continue much longer, because then the impact of recovery and the time taken for recovery becomes that much longer. So everybody is trying and helping each other to ensure that there is minimal damage when it comes to loss of jobs or entire loss of companies. So the whole ecosystem is trying to help each other, but there will be some mishaps. There will be some companies which will wind up. Okay, now, so it's a very complicated question. There's nothing called low cost manufacturing in automotive. You can have better cost structures, you can optimize your cost structures, but your investment runs into millions of dollars for setting up automotive. There's nothing called low cost. There's nothing small scale about automotive. Please realize that. The only small scale we are observing in automotive is some small two-wheeler manufacturers who are making electric two-wheelers, basically importing components from China and assembling it here. Otherwise, no. What companies are doing is, and by the way, automotive is extremely technical and robotized currently. So, and when you have robotics and everything is controlled by computers and machines, there's nothing low cost about it. Yes, cost structures are being relooked into to avoid any kind of wasteful expenditure. But when it comes to manufacturing, you can do frugal, but you can't do low cost. So there's no magical formula. If anybody could predict this accurately, yes, by now I can promise you that. I would be Elon Musk if I could recommend a software to predict exactly. Yes, across the industry we work very, very diligently to predict. But you see, I listed down all the factors which affect our business. Not all factors can be predicted very accurately, which is why last year the industry was predicted to be at a size of 3.2 million, ended up at 2.8 million, which was off by 12%, off the mark by 12%. For an industry as big as ours, if you miss your targets by 12% as an industry, the question is this industry being run by fools who have no idea of what the business is all about? But no, you can't predict the economic growth rates of a country, for instance. You can take assumptions. There are 101 assumptions when you predict demand in the automotive industry. The country's changing government is another. The country's changing policies. Now, suddenly, if the government decides to have demonetization overnight, there's no business in the world and no software which can predict demonetization and the impact it has on your business, because you are not even expecting demonetization when it happens. So the sale of cars for those 3 months had gone haywire because a lot of people used to buy cars in cash then. Okay, how do you predict that? You can't.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Which is the reason there are lots and lots of tools. Every consulting company in the world is working with automotive company to come up with the right predictive models for demand. But let me tell you, all of that can go haywire if a virus comes out of Wuhan town and kills the industry worldwide. Is there any software which would have predicted Wuhan and which would have predicted the impact it has on automotive? No, it doesn't. Yes, answer. The answer is yes, Bushra. I would recommend immediately after this session, log on to www.skoda-auto.co.in and you will find how we use artificial intelligence on our own website. So we were the first automotive manufacturer which uses a chatbot on the website, and I would recommend that you go and test that. Apart from using that AI in chatbots, there are a whole lot of applications of chatbot that the automotive does in the car and in our business. This forum is a bit too short, otherwise I would have taken you through the whole environment of artificial intelligence. But yes, you can check it out on my website and give us feedback on that. Fabulous. Tesla hasn't made money yet. It is yet to be seen when they make money. But yes, fabulous, I would say, earth-shattering, groundbreaking experiment of a technology company coming and disrupting the entire business of automotive. So automotive, if you see, is a very strange mixture of, we have 19th century technology being sold by 21st century technology and everything in between. The internal combustion engine, as you all know, comes from the 19th century. Okay, they have improved to it. There hasn't been any major disruption till Tesla came in. And by the way, Tesla is not the first electric car manufacturer. Yes, they've been phenomenal, but you'll be surprised that the first electric cars were made in the 1800s. So it's nothing new. It is which technology becomes easier to democratize, which defines which way the industry is going. The day we democratize electric cars and batteries and that technology is made available to everybody, it will become your next MP3 player, which killed record players and cassettes. That's how it works. Okay. It's already happened for this year. On 1st of April, the government had announced this some time back that we are jumping from Bharat Stage 2 directly to Bharat Stage 4. Bharat Stage 4 directly to Bharat Stage 6 norms. We bypassed one generation. So from BS4 to BS6. And in certain regards, BS6 norms are slightly tougher than Euro 6 also. Now, for all manufacturers, we were given some time to adapt our technology to suit BS6 emission norms, which we did, which is why the cars have become slightly more expensive from 1st of April onwards for all manufacturers, because everybody has invested millions of dollars and euros to build new engines. So that has already happened. And currently, the BS6 norms that we have in our country are some of the most stringent in the world. So, and all automotive manufacturers have to follow, because otherwise you don't get your cars homologated. You cannot sell a BS4 engine in this country. Simple. So everybody has moved BS6. The automotive sector, again, it works for some people, for some it doesn't. Maruti, Maruti and Honda are two brands which enjoy tremendous loyalty in this market. There are reasons for it. Maruti has a portfolio of products wherein you can enter the franchise through, a 2 lakh, 2.5 lakh, or 3 lakh rupee car, let's say, absolutely entry level Alto or Celerio, and you can continue staying with Maruti for the next 20 years and just keep upgrading, keep changing your cars, 15, 20 years. Same for Honda also, because the products are so great and you can move up the Honda value chain without moving out of the brand. But it also happens for a lot of people that, especially for people who buy cars for their neighbors and to show off, and this is a very large percentage of people who do that, is that as you move up in life, car being a statement of who you are and what you're doing, you want to upgrade your brands also. So you may have started with a Maruti and then you moved out on to a Hyundai, and then to a Honda, then to a slightly fancier car like a Skoda, for instance. And then when you started earning a lot of money, you would go for a BMW, Mercedes, Audi. That's how you jump. So for such kind of people, there is no concept of loyalty. So it works both ways. How brands work on loyalty is, and Skoda is one of the brands where loyalty is important for us because we get a lot of repeat customers. You have to work and very hard for your customers throughout the ownership cycle. Be connected to them, be attached to them, give them exceptional service throughout their ownership cycle so that they are happy enough to come back and buy another car from you. And that is how the cookie crumbles in the loyalty business. You have to work really hard to keep your customers happy. So the after sales business is bouncing back much quicker than the sales business. We have seen that in our case also, because you have to service your car even if you don't buy a new car immediately. You have to go in for service. A lot of cars have been lying unused for the last 3 months across big cities. Those guys have to go back. You have your periodic maintenance, 6 months or 1 year, as the case may be. A lot of cases of batteries dying out or your fuel filters and all those things not working. So after sales business will be quicker to pick up after this COVID-19 lockdown goes away. And we have seen in our case also that we have something called a daily throughput and a monthly throughput of how many cars come into the system for service to our workshops. We have already reached a level of 50% in servicing of cars, whereas in sales, it will still take a lot of time for us to reach 50% of our targets. So that's how it is. So after sales has picked up much quicker.